Hey, how's it going? Gareth James here for mttpokerschool.com, and today I'm going to run through another couple of hands from our Instagram GTO flop strategy posts. So here's the first one. Villain, who has 32 bigs, opens to 2.1 bigs from the cutoff. Hero, who has 36 bigs, 3 bets to 6.3 bigs from the button. And the blinds fold, and then Villain calls. The flop comes 8 of spades, 6 of diamonds, 5 of spades. Villain checks, and what is Hero's strategy? So you've got 4 options. A, check entire range. B, sometimes check and sometimes bet small. C, bet entire range for a small sizing. And D, bet entire range for a big sizing. So start to think about your answer. If you need to, pause the video and think about that. I will just run through some of the answers we've got here. Real mixed bag. So we've got A, so check entire range. We've got some C's here, so betting entire range for a small sizing. We've got betting entire range for a big sizing. We've got sometimes check and sometimes bet small, and not sure why no one likes B, but I'm sure there's some others down here. We've got check entire range A. We've got some more C's, bet entire range for a small sizing. There is a B here. Okay, so let's now have a look at this in Pio. Okay, so let's look at the strategy then. So it's got the option to check, to bet small, and to bet big. So no big betting going on. This number would go down to 0 if we ran the solution for long enough. So we've got some small betting going on, so like 62% of the time, and then some checking like the rest of the time, 38%, I guess. So the answer is going to be B, sometimes check, sometimes bet small. Let's have a look at the strategy then. So you can see that hands like over pairs, like tens and jacks, are just being bet very, very frequently. And then as we move up through the pairs, you can see that aces is actually being checked almost half of the time. And, you know, it doesn't require the same sort of protection that jacks and tens do, so that's why it's checking sometimes. And also it's good to have some strong hands to be able to check back and then call turn and river bets. You know, if we're just betting all of our over pairs and our top pair and our flush draws, you know, any hands with decent equity, then when we check, we are capping ourselves somewhat. So yeah, it's really, really important not to do that. We can see that pocket eights, if we do have pocket eights in this situation, it's being checked all the time. That's because it blocks our opponent's continues. And again, we want to be able to check back and have some strong hands on the turn. We hover over ace king. You can see that it's mixing. You might think that, okay, we should be betting more frequently with the spades because we have 2 overs and a flush draw. But as you can see, it wants to check a little more than half of the time. And ace queen just going almost for a pure check. Actually does like betting with spades this time. Ace jack of spades does very much like betting rather than checking, whereas all the others, the hearts, the diamonds and the clubs, just like to go ahead and to check. So ace king is very similar to aces in that it's checking around half the time, just a little bit less. Let's look at some other hands then. So ace 8, pretty similar to jacks and tens in value, in the sense that it's a sort of strong top pair hand that has a lot of equity, but is pretty vulnerable to overcards. So yeah, it just wants to go ahead and bet this all the time. And you can see that the same thing goes for king 8 suited if we have, you know, this tiny little bit of king 8 suited in our 3-bet range. Queen 8 suited is being checked at, you know, some frequency. Then we get down to jack 8 suited, which is our weakest top pair hand. We go ahead and check that. And again, that's just because we want to have some top pairs that we actually check back. So again, we don't want to just bet all of our top pair plus hands, so we're not capped going into the turn. We want to be able to, you know, on various turns, be able to call a turn bet from our opponent. So yeah, pretty interesting solution or strategy. Just really important to make sure that we're not just betting full frequency. Let's just have a quick look at the equities. The equities run actually pretty close together here. And this is, you know, a very common theme that when the equities do run close together, the in-position player, you know, despite having all of those strong hands in their range, just won't be able to, you know, bet all the time. If we go to out of position, you know, they have the 8s and the 6s and the 5s. So they have all the sets where we maybe don't, you know, we probably don't 3-bet 6s and 5s. I know it's in our range, but it's a very, very low frequency. You can see like this thin slither here. So it's just not happening very often. We just don't have sets in this spot. So if we go into the Range Explorer and have a look at 2-pair plus, we can see that in position we have 1.2% of our range is 2-pair plus, whereas out of positions 8.3%. So they just have a huge nut advantage here. So yeah, all of those things together just means that we don't get to bet very frequently. Not as frequently as we would say on a king high board, for example. Let's have a look at out of position strategy as well, just to sort of round it off for this hand. And as you can see, likes to go for some jams with some top pairs, some overcards with a gut shot. It's pretty interesting strategy. We've got some flush draws here and backdoor flush draws, so like ace ten of spades, obviously 2 overs and a flush draw. Just wants to go ahead and jam at this point, and ace ten of diamonds wants to go ahead and call, just has enough equity against our bluffs and our range as a whole. Does have some aces in there, just going to go ahead and call with those most of the time. You can see there are some combinations that it wants to go ahead and jam as well. Yeah, so I think this is pretty interesting, pretty cool strategy. Just going ahead and getting it in here with these sort of combo hands like pair plus a draw. So yeah, I think this is really nice. We've got some 2-pair here as well, 2-pair here. But yeah, there's some pair plus draws in this spot. Fours turning it sort of into a bluff. I guess it's also benefits from protection. It does have a gut shot. You can see that the 4 of spades gives us, a couple more % equity. And also, like, we can just get some hands to fold, like overcards, like unpaired hands. So yeah, that's going to wrap things up for that hand. Let's have a look at the next one. Hero with 40 bigs opens to 2.3 bigs from the button. The small blind folds, and the big blind, who has hero covered, has 45 bigs, goes ahead and calls. The flop comes 8 of spades, 8 of diamonds, 3 of spades, villain checks. And so the question here is, what is hero strategy? So this time there are 5 options. You can see we've got check entire range, we've got sometimes check and sometimes bet small, we've got mixed check, betting small and betting big, betting entire range for a small sizing, and betting entire range for a big sizing. So have a think about which of those you think is the right answer. I'll just run through some of these. So D seems to be very, very popular here, betting entire range for a small sizing, which was something that was very popular in the last hand as well. We've got some E's here, betting entire range for big sizing. Let's see what else we've got. Some more E's. We've got some B, sometimes check and sometimes bet small. We've got another B here. We've got check entire range again. We've got betting entire range for small sizing. So yeah, I think betting entire range for small sizing is one that's coming out very, very often here. Let's dive into Pio and find out the answer. Okay, so let's have a look at the strategy then. And if we go to the top right, we can see this is bet big, bet small, and check. And so the answer is B, sometimes bet small and sometimes check. So if you went for that answer, well done. Shout out to you. I think this is a really, really interesting spot, simply because on paired boards, the big blind is supposed to do a lot of check raising. Let's just confirm that. So we go ahead and we bet small. And you can see this number here, check raise frequency is almost 35%. And this is something that I think that the population just isn't doing, which will then have a knock-on effect to what your strategy should look like in position. So at the moment, if we're playing against someone who's playing perfectly, playing what Pio believes to be the GTO response, then we're supposed to be able to bet small 84-85% of the time. And the reason for that is that our opponent is just going to be playing very, very aggressively. So you're going to be check raising, their trips, which we would kind of expect. And then check raising some 3x. And then if we hover over some of these hands, we've got like 9-6 of spades, which is a flush draw, which makes sense, but also 9-6 of diamonds, which is a backdoor flush draw. Has some backdoor straight draw outs, I guess, as well on the turn. So yeah, so it's kind of taking the sort of hands in here that have a flush draw or a backdoor flush draw with something else to go with it. So you can see if I hover over... let's have a look here. Jack 6 of diamonds, for example, that isn't being played. It's just going to go ahead and fold. But if we then go across to Jack 7, that is wanting to go ahead and call or raise sometimes. And the same sort of thing with 10-7 of diamonds as well. So yeah, some of the hands then I just don't think are getting check raised. Some of those backdoor flush draws, if you're playing against a good opponent, they will find those check raises. But a lot of players just won't. And also these check raises as well. So again, it's the sort of backdoor flush draw, can improve to some kind of straight draw on the turn kind of hands. So yeah, you can see here 7-6. I've just hovering over here, so you can see in the bottom right hand corner we've got 7 of spades, 6 of hearts, or 7 of hearts, 6 of spades. Those kind of hands. Any kind of 7-6 off with a spade is going ahead and check raising a very high frequency, and that's something again I just don't see population doing that much, especially in sort of low to mid stakes MTTs. You will obviously see it in high stakes MTTs. So yeah, it's supposed to be playing very, very aggressively. Now, when we reduce this strategy, like we could go in and we could node lock this strategy, and we could say, I don't think that the opponent I'm playing against is finding anywhere near the correct sort of, in quotes, check raises in this spot. So I think they're just going to be check raising a much lower frequency. You can see it's just not going to be anywhere near 35%. And if we did that, then all of a sudden this range would look like 100% pure betting small. So if you chose, I think it was answer D, to bet small with your entire range, then I can't really fault you for that. It's just not the GTO strategy. It's very, very close to being a pure range bet in this situation. But if you were thinking of it in terms of, okay, well, when playing against population, I'm playing against someone that's not finding 35% of check raises, then I think choosing, to bet range here is a really, really good strategy. So that's something to look out for in the future, is when you're running these simulations, always think about what the population's doing. Is the population playing like Pio? And most of the time they're not. So that means we have to adjust. You might have heard this whole sort of GTO versus exploitative argument, and you're trying to work out which sort of side you want to fall on. Well, actually, you can use both in order to come up with the sort of the best answer in this situation. So you need to know what the GTO looks like in order to see where the population is sort of deviating from that strategy, and then you can say, oh well, actually they're doing this, therefore to exploit them I'm going to do this. So in this example, we could see that population's not finding 35% of check raises in this situation, and therefore we can go ahead and we can see bet our range for a small sizing. Hope you enjoyed that. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the like button and the subscribe button, and also make sure to follow us on Instagram for more of these posts and for you to get involved in that discussion. This has been Gareth James for mttpokerschool.com signing off. Take care, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.